Welcome to another hard surface practice session. In this one we're going to be modelling a kind of turret of some sort, a rocket launching turret. So to start with I'm just making the base, nothing complicated, just some basic modelling. Just flattened down a cube, beveled the corners, chamfered the corners rather, and then I'm just going to fix up the topology and use mirror to make it completely symmetrical. Check for merging the vertexes, and then we're going to add in a cylinder to start working on the base piece for the mount for this thing. We're also going to be using the bevel shader method rather than sub-D modelling. I just think it gives a lot cleaner results, it's a lot easier to work with, it's a lot easier to assign colours without having to do a full texture pass and unwrap and everything else. So with that in mind, we're going to be using quite high vertex counts on cylinders, as we'll need the actual geometry there. But square edges will of course be done by bevel shaders. Just going to resize this part, make it a bit wider, excluding the Z-axis with Shift Z. I'm just going to move that top bit up and that bit down. Going to add in another cube now. This one's going to be for the part that holds the weapon. Just going to snap it into place and then just resize it. I want it slightly wider than on the y-axis. So I think this part's going to rotate, and then it's going to have a hinge at the top which will rotate the weapon somehow. Just using a duplicate box as a boolean to cut out the middle portion. I'm going to bevel these edges, clamp overlay, and give it I think it's 10 segments. Gives quite a good rounding. Can fix up the topology here, just inset and then merge at last vert. Next we're going to isolate and cut with the knife tool and mirror that over. Just make sure all the verts are merged and shade auto smooth is on. Next we're going to borrow some geometry from this piece below, and we're just going to turn this into a cutter to make some sort of cutout of this base piece so it looks like it rotates. If we use a brush boolean, we can put that in place first, and then we can chamfer it in place so we can see the exact result we're getting. Just going to inset and extrude down the bottom part all the way through. It just gives us this nice cutout. We can apply the brush and that removes the cutter. We need some sort of boolean to cut through this piece. Let's just count up the edges though. We've got 10 in a quarter circle, so obviously we need 40 for a whole cylinder. So I'm just going to remake that piece, but with 40 verts this time. Snap that into place and all the lines should match up perfectly. Just going to scale that, excluding the x-axis with Shift Z. Okay, it's looking pretty cool so far. I'm just going to duplicate this ring of faces here because we're going to bring that cylinder back basically to use as another cutter. But for now we're just going to bring in a box to make the main housing for the I think it's going to be like a rocket launcher. Yeah, let's go for a rocket launcher. want the front to be slightly shorter than the back, and I'm just going to snap these loop cuts in to match up with the where the hinge is going to be. Next we're going to put that through there. We're going to union this together in a moment. Just recalculate the faces outside because the part I duplicated it from, the faces were facing the other way. Just going to add in some extra loops through the model. This is so we can confine the geometry to just those areas when we fix up the topology. Just going to apply the scale. If you ever get weird results when you're chamfering or beveling a corner or edge, it's because you need to apply the scale, or 9 times out of 10 it is. If not, it's like an unmerged vert or something like that. Just going to add some detailing to this piece, merge verts, and that's sitting in there perfectly. Just going to readjust the size of the base piece. This is another good thing of having everything separate like this. And yeah, just going to chamfer this holding shape, this part of the bracket. Mirror that across. It's quite fun working like this because you're not too concerned with what you're making. You can just do what looks right and what looks good to you. Just experiment with the shape of the thing. See here we can just inset this and then merge at last vert just to clean up all that geometry. It's not entirely necessary, but it's just something I like to do while I'm working. Makes me feel better about the scene. Next we're going to try and position some cylinders in place for where the rockets are going to go. I think what led me to start modelling this piece was I saw a clip the other day of Arnold Schwarzenegger holding at the big bazooka in Commando, the big thing on his shoulder with four barrel rocket launcher. And it just looked so cool. I was like, I'll need to make one of those one day. Just going to move this down into place. Normally I'd try and put these exactly on the lines, but I think I might have to space them out slightly differently here and then maybe refigure out where I'm putting the lines that go around the box. You can do all that before booliening. It just makes life easier so that you can just hit merge everything. Yeah, 4 looks weird. I don't like how four rocket things look on that at all. This looks like this is more the kind of piece that would be maybe mounted on top of a battleship, I think. So it'd fire like definitely more than 4 rockets in one go. So I'm just going to space them out differently. Okay, I want to separate the front and the back, so I'm just going to use a mirror with bisect just to basically chop them all in half. And then I can move the back ones back a bit. These are going to be unioned to the main body to make a sort of exhaust system. Somewhere for the gases to escape when the rockets fire. Again, I'm just going to readjust the height of some of these edge loops just so that they fit perfectly into the midpoint of those cylinders that we're going to cut out. again, it's not entirely necessary to do this. It depends on what geometry you're gonna be doing with your geometry after the Boolean operation. I think I half do it sometimes just to show you how you would go about cleaning it up, or could go about cleaning it up. It's important every now and then to check your face orientation as well, especially when you're doing Booleans. These wouldn't, these holes in the front wouldn't cut originally. That's because of those holes there. That's why I filled them. Just going to select this front face and select similar coplanar, and then when we inset that, we can delete this edge around the ring, this edge around the side of here, and we're just left with a ring of faces around each hole we cut. Just going to extrude those out, border select, and then bevel them. Merge all the verts and shade auto smooth. Sorry. Okay, back to the rear of the rocket launcher. We're just going to select all of these and maybe have them come out at different thicknesses. So we'd have one bit that looks like it's the actual bracket that goes into the rocket launcher. And a tube. I'm going to cut that bit down there. The knife tool again. If you see me using the knife tool, it's K for the knife, A for angle snap, and then C for cut through. Okay, just going to select that, extrude along normals so we can make that part fatter. Some of these rocket launchers, not necessarily this type, but with some of these you get this sort of fat bulbous bit on the end, kind of like a stopper of some sort. I don't know. It's usually more on the sort of handheld type, I think. But I think it looks cool, so I'm trying to include it in this one. Just going to duplicate these faces forwards, and then I want to make some sort of rocket tip protruding out the front of the canister where it's sitting. So just going to bevel the crap out of that, merge everything, and then maybe scale. If we scale it on the wire, that should work. Just going to make them sort of more torpedo shaped, I suppose. Obviously that's messing up the auto smooth. I can fix that. Not entirely sure on that. I'll come back to that in a minute. I just want to make them slightly narrower so they sit differently inside those parts. Just seeing if I can make this rounder without adding too much geometry. Could have a snub-nosed one, I suppose. That doesn't make a lot of sense. These are large ballistic things. I mean, you might get that in like a small bullet. I don't think you'd get that in a rocket. Maybe like a bunker piercing rocket. I don't know. I know very little about artillery. This is just mainly stuff I've seen in films that I think looks cool. So that's why I'm babbling on about it. Just going to adjust these again. I want them to sit just enough that there's a bit of a shadow in there, so you can see that it actually is sitting inside it, rather than if it's perfectly flush, you won't catch the proper shadows in there. That's looking better. Just going to do that one more time. Just inset it and put it out very slightly. That's fine. We don't need to see the back of that. I'm not going to bother modelling the whole rocket. Like I say, it's just for show, basically. It's just for the point of the modelling exercise. Just going to move the origin point for this up to here, so that it pivots where its actual hinge is. I'm going to parent the rockets to that, so that all moves as one. And then I'm going to parent that to the stand so that that all rotates as one as well. You simply click the first object, click the second object, press P for parent, and then parent to object. I want to do something along this side. It's looking very flat and boring. Yeah, maybe add a chamfer along the whole edge of this piece. Yeah, need a lot more detail on this. You'll see as we go through, it's sort of you build up detail as you go. You can cut away at any point. You could cut this whole casing. You could cut panels in it, cut holes in it, put wires, cogs, whatever you want underneath to give you more detail. I'm not going too detailed with this, as it's not the purpose of the video. Just going to make 3 evenly sized bands here. Delete that middle part, then bridge this across. Scale 0 on the X, extrude, snap that across, merge everything. Then that is exactly the same thickness as all these other parts. I'm just going to snap that back across and merge everything again. Again, just building up levels of detail. Fixing up these parts, just making sure everything's quads. Where it needs to be anyway, not everywhere. Not a madman. Want some sort of detail on the top. Actually, I want the bars that go across the middle. I want those to sort of sink in the middle a little bit. Just trying to figure out the best way to do that. We take all 3 of these and lower them just enough that the auto smooth snaps off, so we get a nice hard edge on those pieces. This could be better. Quite like that. Don't like that part at the back. Might just extrude that as a separate piece and scale it in. Just going to merge these. Pull these back, merge these. And mirror that across. Bevel this into an oval at the top. And again, inset and merge last, just to make that a fan with the geometry. I'm going to use this cylinder as another Boolean object, just to cut a hole through this. Need to again check how many sides we need. 6 edges, so we need a 24-sided cylinder. Snap that back into place. Just debating whether I should have something running along the whole top of it that goes into the back. I decided against that in the end. It wouldn't have a sight on it because it's kind of like an automatic rocket launcher that you'd get on board some sort of ship or vessel or whatever. It's not something you'd look through personally. It might have a sight on it that's kind of like from a camera that goes to a control room somewhere maybe. I think most of this sort of stuff is controlled by laser, because I imagine because rockets are probably expensive, and I imagine firing one at the wrong target is probably a bit of a no-no. Always been sort of fascinated with military type technology and stuff. A friend of mine and me were once up London and we accidentally walked onto HMS Belfast and promptly got told to get off because it's a military vehicle and we was trespassing. we'd followed these other guys on there, thinking that you could kind of go on and have a look around and maybe have a tour of the place or something. But we got halfway up the sort of gangway and this to this booth where we just assumed you bought tickets there, and this guy was like, "No, you're not supposed to be here. You need to leave rather urgently." So we hurried our way back off rather quick. I'd like to say that was when we were kids, but it wasn't that long ago. A couple of years maybe. Something always happens when I go out with that friend. I'm totally blaming him. So just going to boolean this detail on the side now. Just going to look at the topology. Oh, I've just realised that hasn't gone all the way across. So I'm just going to make the boolean wider. Could have it sit in the middle, I suppose. Not sure whether I like that or not. No, I'm just going to have it go the full width. As you can see, it makes some messy topology using a boolean like that, especially where I've got cylindrical details cut out already at the top and bottom. Need to be careful where I'm cutting, really. You can notice where I'm using the knife tool there that there was a different number of verts through the side in different places. That's because it's going through this cylinder here. Same with the top. I'm just going to cut, I don't think that one worked properly. I'm going to cut the top ones just up to that edge and then sort of merge them, join them up to the cylinder detail. It's not clean, it's not pretty, it's not perfect, but it'll do for now. We're not doing any more booleans on any more bevels, sorry, on that bottom piece, so that should be fine. It's a very small and hard to see area anyway, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Just going to see what a chamfer looks like on this. I'm really not sure about that. Oh god, no, that looks bloody awful. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, no, I don't like that at all. I feel like it needs something, but that is not what it needs. Get a rather funky inset there. Let's not do that. Yeah, you'll see those details go in quite a lot of these sort of models that I do. Your sort of bevel and edge, where it's got some supporting edges near it. Just going to inset this. I should really fix up all the geometry, but I'm not going to because I'm lazy. And it's not necessary. Just going to see what happens if I bring that out. Does that work? That works. That's what I was kind of going for, hoping for. Again, this is just building up those very small details we're working on now, just little notches cut out. Most of the big shapes are already done. I still need to do something along the side of the main rocket. Just going to duplicate this side face. And turn this into a cutter. I think that might be the best way to go here. Just use that as a cutter. You can do all kinds of different things to it, scale it, inset it. Just going to merge that. Let's get rid of some of these lines. This is just trying out different things at this stage. I don't want it to intersect with that bottom line because I feel like that's a slightly awkward line to have there. Yeah, couldn't seem to delete the right part here, so I'm just going to do it differently. Let's pull that out and extrude that bit back. We apply the scale and scale it -1 on the x-axis just to flip it around, and then I'm going to use that as a boolean to just cut into the side. Does that work? Yes, pretty much. Minor geometry fixes needed, topology fixes rather. Just join these up, join the corners up. Again, because this is quite a chunky piece anyway, you can get away with booleans quite easily on this piece. Just have another little raised up detail here. Sometimes when you look at a model at, say, this stage, and you can think, well, where would you start making that? And it's, if you've been following from the beginning, you'll know it's nothing but boxes and cylinders. That's all I've used so far. Very simple stuff. And just using the default Blender add-on ball tools makes life a million times easier. Just going to go back to the base, feel like it needs some extra details. Just going to duplicate that triangle. And let's do some more booleans, why not? Let's make it a bit bigger. Extrude. Let's round the corners. Something very satisfying about a rounded triangle, I'm not sure why. You see that in a lot of design. Just going to increase the auto smooth so it rounds the full thing. Check the face orientation before we boolean. I've been doing a lot of random stuff. Cut that. I think we'll go all the way through with that. That kind of works. But I also want to scale the bottom part in. No real need to fix up the topology for this piece. It's a very minor detail, and I'm not going to be doing loads of work on it anyway. Just going to mirror that all around. And of course we can still tilt this thing any way we want. It's easier to work on not tilted, obviously. So let's try adding some side details to the canister or the rocket holder or whatever you want to call it. I'm sure it has a proper name that some clever military guy will tell me. I could look it up, but can't be asked. Oh, that's where I joined that other thing on the auto smooth. It's gone all weird. Just going to change that back to 30. Move that up slightly. That's better. The only smoothing I really want is on cylinders and the rockets themselves. Pretty much everything else is a hard edge. I'm going to cut some notches for this piece here. So I'm just going to scale a box into place. I don't want it to intersect in any kind of way with the surrounding lines, or try to avoid it as much as possible. Just want it to sit like quite comfortably in the middle of a face. Not the exact middle, but you know what I mean. Oh, and as you can see, faces are flipped, which is why the boolean's not working. So we just flip those, and voila, there we go. Just going to pull that in a bit more towards the middle. Looks good like that. And then we can apply that, and that gets rid of the cutter. Same with this bottom piece. I want to, if it needs something, it needs a notch cut out of it, it needs an array or a radial notch cut out of it. I'm just going to try cutting a portion of the side off for now. I could have made this box a million times easier a different way, but I don't know why I just keep making new boxes and scaling them. There we go. Scale that into place and position it there. We're going to use the brush one because I'm going to move it around, see what line of shapes I like. Kind of like if I move it over there and then move that edge over there, so it kind of goes with the profile of the cylinder. That works. Merge that over, bisect and flip. Again, I'm going to steal that circle from down there, that cylindrical piece. I feel like I need to make some sort of giant screw or bolt that sits in this piece. Just something to make it look like it's held on there somehow. Let's go with a giant bolt, giant screw, sorry. Just scale that in. Just selecting all and merging the verts every now and then, you'll notice. Okay, let's try a cylinder detail here. The trouble is I'm not subdividing, so any cylindrical detail is going to need a lot of geometry, and there's not a lot of geometry there, so this is going to look quite jagged. Kind of works from a distance. Okay, on to the texturing. I'm going to split the view. Just check what's going on with my scene lights. I've got an HDRI loaded in as always, and my default lights. The setup that I borrowed from Curtis Holt. He's got great videos on how to set default Blender scene up. So every time you start it up, you're working with that same lighting setup or that same whatever. Just going to start with the base piece now. Make it metal. I want it to be like a light metal, like a chrome or a brushed steel. Just going to set up. I always do this the same way. Set up the ambient occlusion through a color ramp, through a multiplier, mix RGB, factor set to 1, and then use the second color to control the base color of the object. The color ramp crunched the black to halfway along, so it's getting ambient occlusion, and then use the bevel shader to fine tune the edges, the hard edges basically. And then what I usually do is I go through and I apply that same material to everything, and if it needs something changing, click the little number next to the material and it will make it its own version. So as you can see there, drop that down to 0.8. That works for the front of that canister. Now the rockets don't need a bevel because there's no edges. Oh, and I forgot to separate the material. So separate the material, go back in. I kind of want the rockets themselves, I want the tips to look like painted metal, maybe. The launcher, I want it to look green, not metal. Like a dark kind of army green or a plasticky green. Everything else, quite happy with it being metal. The underside of the rocket is in so much shadow, it's not really going to make much difference what's down there, because you can't see it anyway. Put the anisotropic on, that works. I'm totally not pronouncing that right. Alright, just rendered a short animation and calling this one done. If you enjoyed this, a subscribe would be welcome. Thanks and take care.